Welcome to the second of our Archives Month events. This year our theme is Lights, Camera, ROLLA! Woo! And we're doing a lot of different things related to film and the ROLLA area, Missouri, and Hollywood. We have two more events after tonight, possibly only one. On the 22nd, we are anticipating Jim Bogan being in town to give a talk about the history of the UMR film series and his documentary endeavors. So we will be showing, if he's here, we will be showing a couple of his short films. Chalk Up Another, which was related to the film series, and Man vs. Tree, which is prime stuff. On the 29th, we will be in cooperation with the ROLLA Public Library. We will be doing that event at the ROLLA Public Library. I'll be doing like a 15-minute talk on Gerald Rackett, who was a 1920 graduate who went to Hollywood and became the technical VP of Technicolor, and then the technical VP of Columbia Pictures. And along the way, he and a co-worker invented the 3-strip film process that made Wizard of Oz possible. Guess what movie we'll be showing after I stop talking? Anyway, tonight we have Dr. Larry Gragg, who is going to be talking about his time in the exciting world of documentaries and his time being the expert in many of these documentaries. We'll get to see what happens behind the scenes. So, take it away, Larry.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm amazed at people coming in out of this beautiful weather to listen to an old man talk about a topic that actually is interesting to me. I hope it's fascinating to you. I've always loved documentaries. As long as I can remember, we got our first television in my family in about 1955, 56, and I still remember watching documentaries. There was that omniscient voice that always introduced everything, and you learned so much from it. You got to see still photos, you got to see moving images. And I never, ever thought I would be in a documentary. It was just something I would watch. The closest I ever got until 3 years ago was 2010 and 11. I published a book on the English colonization in Barbados in the West Indies. In about October of 2010, I got an email from a staffer with a production company in London saying, you may have heard of a program we make called Who Do You Think You Are? Which is a British program where they do family history of British celebrities. And I had to admit, I didn't know what it was. It's been on 20 seasons. And in her email, she said, the celebrity I'm working on traces their family roots to Barbados in the 1640s. And we noticed in your book, you claim that a certain planter was the first successful commercial sugar planter on Barbados. Could you send us copies of the primary sources to confirm that claim? I said, okay. So I scanned the documents and sent them on to her, and then I got a phone call. She said, this is great. Could you book the first week in December to perhaps be flown to Barbados to be part of this program? I said, sure. I kept waiting to get a message that I'm going to get flown to Barbados again. And then I got word that they had decided they would only go back to the 1800s, not the 1600s, and I would not be needed for it. And I wrote back and I said, well, who is the celebrity that I missed being on air with? And she wrote back saying, well, we can't tell you because it's always a surprise on British television. But what I will do is send you a DVD. This is 2010. The night before, it will arrive the night before so you can see who it is. So anyone have any clues who I missed out on being on British TV with this beautiful actress, wonderful actress named Gwyneth Paltrow. Her wonderful side of her family was traced back to Barbados. So I thought that was it. That was my one and only chance to ever be in anything on television or in a documentary. But then, since 2021, I've been on the documentary circuit. being in 5, and I've been interviewed for 2 more. And what I think I'll do first is just identify them for you. The city of Las Vegas decided when they were celebrating their centennial in 2005 that they would raise a lot of money for what they call their Centennial Commission. So everybody who bought a license plate, Centennial license plate, kicked in a lot of extra money, and they have spent about $20 million on a whole host of history preservation projects. And then about 2018, they decided what we'd like to have is a comprehensive history of Las Vegas on film. So I found out about it by going on YouTube one night and found that they had done Las Vegas 1905 to 1920, and since then they've done one for every decade. They just released the one for the 1960s. So the first one I was in was City of Las Vegas, the 1930s. They kept me around for City of Las Vegas in the 1940s. The first one was 2021, this one was 2022. And also that year, I got an email from a production company based in New Jersey saying that we are making a 3-part series for the History Channel, and we'd like you to be a part of that. And they gave me a different title. This is what the title turned out to be. Now, my part was to help out with the bets, B-E-T-S, not the other 2 parts that built America. And then I returned to Las Vegas for this 2023 release of the decade of the 1950s, and then this summer I was in this one, which deals with this beautiful building in downtown Las Vegas, which was their first federal building. Built circa 1930-31. It served as a federal court building and a post office in Las Vegas. But once they got a newer, bigger federal building, this thing fell into disrepair. They didn't know what to do with it. And then there was a mayor in Las Vegas named Oscar Goodman, who before he became mayor was as he explained to me when I got to interview him, he said, I was a lawyer for so-called mobsters. He said, only in a city like Las Vegas could someone with my background become mayor for 3 terms. And when he was turned out, his wife ran 3 times and won. So the citizens of Las Vegas, for what is it now, 24 years, have only had a Goodman as mayor of the city. Well, he told me in this interview I had with him in 2007, I think it was, he said, people will not come to Las Vegas to go to a museum to see Picasso, but they will come to Las Vegas to see a museum about the mob. He was right. This thing has attracted several million people in its first few years, so they decided to make a documentary on what the building was used for, and they called upon me to play a part in what it was used for in 1950. Those are the 5 I've been in. And then in February this year, another email came in from someone I didn't know. She was on the staff of the production company, 6 West Productions in Los Angeles, saying, we make episodes for the History Channel's History's Greatest Mysteries, and the host is the actor Lawrence Fishburne, who I didn't get to meet. I thought, maybe I'd get to meet Lawrence Fishburne. I didn't. And the mystery they wanted me to be a part of was the mystery surrounding the murder of Bugsy Siegel on June 20th, 1947, and who could have done it, and what would have been the motives. And when I finished that interview, which took 3 hours, I didn't realize I was sitting in a chair for 3 hours, the interviewer said, you know, that went pretty well. We're going to do another organized crime mystery later this spring. Would you like to be in that one? And I said, sure. What is it? And she said, the 1929 St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Chicago. So those 2 will come out in 2025. So that's the body of my work so far. And if anybody else emails, someone did. I got an email from a Jewish documentary filmmaker saying, we read your work on Bugsy Siegel and how he tried to help with money and guns the creation of the nation of Israel. And we're going to be in New York to do some filming. Can you be here on this certain day? And I said, I'm going to be in Los Angeles on that same day, or else I would have loved it. So that would have been number 8. That would have been fun. So, how do you get picked to participate in documentaries? All documentary filmmakers have researchers. Sometimes just one, sometimes more than one. And they do more than Google. I mean, they Google for information, to be sure, but they also try to find people who've written books about the subject for which they're going to make a documentary. And that helped me here because of my 4 books I've done on the history of Las Vegas. The first one, Bright Light City, played a role in me being picked for Las Vegas in the 1940s. And the Bugsy Siegel book helped for the 1940s. And then the book that's called Becoming America's Playground, Las Vegas in the 1950s, when I did a Zoom meeting with the writer and the producer for that one, the writer just kind of picked up the book and waved it, saying, "This has become my Bible." And he had all these Post-its on many pages. So that made me feel like they were making a serious effort to have an accurate documentary. And then the last one I'm going to talk about has to do with the book that came out in 2023, which was on Bugsy Siegel's partner, Mo Sedway. So you either get picked for that reason, or sometimes someone will recommend you. If I go back to this one, when Boyd Productions in Connecticut contacted me, the individual who sent the email said, "You've been recommended by the head of the Las Vegas Centennial Commission as someone who could be helpful for this episode of the 1930s." So it's either a recommendation by somebody, or because of something that you've written as a journal article or a book. All right, so how in the world do you prepare for an interview in a documentary? You're not just brought in cold. They actually send you, some places call it talking points, others say they are questions. And the first one I opened up, I thought there'd be a page of questions. Page after page after page of questions. It just goes on and on and on because of the work of the researchers. And I just put up here some examples of what they sent. And the researcher wrote this possible answer, not that they wanted me to say that. They just said, here's roughly the length of responses we'd like to have. They only want 2 to 3 sentences. They don't want some old windbag, like an old history professor going on and on and on about a question that they asked. And they don't expect the people who they pick to be interviewed to answer all the questions, because they want people who have some authority in responding to the questions. So, if you know anything about me, once I got to all the pages of questions, I spent days. I went through, first of all, just what did I remember, and I typed those out and I went, oh, this is not enough. I gotta go, and I did lots of, it's like I was writing a journal article. So I did all the preparations, and then there has to be a location for the interview. And it depends on the production company. So let me show you photos of the places that I was interviewed. Where's that?
It's the Chinese right there.
Yeah, I was interviewed at the channel. I'll tell you why in just a little bit. So once in ROLLA, 3 times in Las Vegas, once in Newark, New Jersey. What that has to do with Las Vegas, I'll try and explain a little bit. And 2 in this beautiful location, Marina del Rey in Southern California. It was an absolutely beautiful place. There's no place there I could ever afford. That's where the warehouse was for the interview. So the settings, and the reason I'm talking about the settings has something to do with what I'm wearing tonight. What you have as wardrobe depends upon, I found out, what kind of lighting is there? Is there going to be natural light for the shots? Is there going to be no natural light for the shot? So I was interviewed in 4 houses. Let's go with this first one. This was near the end of the first year of the pandemic. So when I agreed to be part of this documentary, the staffer emailed saying, we'd like to fly you here to Connecticut for the interview. And I responded very quickly, I'm not getting on a plane with multiple masks on because the pandemic really frightens me. So they said, okay, we'll come to ROLLA. So the interviewer and lighting specialist and a sound specialist, flew to St. Louis, rented an SUV. We got two parking spots for them in front of the Chancellor's residence, and they told me to show up with my hair combed because no one was going to touch me, no one was going to brush my hair, no makeup. They were there with masks on. The only people without masks were the interviewer, who was about 15 feet away from me, and I didn't have a mask on, and we never came close to each other. The reason, it's the Chancellor's residence. If I can go back to that first example, they wanted a house that looked like the 1930s. We come to Rolla, can you get us a house that looks like the 1930s? I thought, well, there are a lot of houses in Rolla that look like the 1930s, but they needed some space. So I thought maybe the Chancellor's residence would work, so I emailed Chancellor Degani, told him what this was about, and he said, oh yeah, sure, go ahead. I'll be out of there by, they started at 9 o'clock. He said, I'm out of the house long before that. So that was the first location. Then the other houses were in Las Vegas. The first one was a house very close to Fremont Street, which is the old part of Las Vegas, and it was a house built in the 1940s, so it would fit the theme of the 40s. It was the home of a early hotel developer, and we got to go down to the basement where he had this gigantic safe where he kept all of his money, and we couldn't get the safe open to see if there was anything left in there. Then they had a house that was built in the 1950s in Las Vegas on the west side of the city. The other locations were, in Newark. This company was based in Newark, New Jersey, so they flew me from St. Louis to Newark, and someone picked me up at the airport, and I went to the public library, and they had black cloth over all the windows. They had it absolutely dark versus all the natural light that I experienced in the houses. So until I got to where they had all the lights for the filming, I was stumbling around in this public library that had closed down because of the pandemic, and finally somebody came and took me by the hand and said, here we go, we're going to go over here. And then for the fourth interview I did for the Las Vegas production, it was in the penthouse of the Hotel Casino, the El Cortez. The owner from the 1950s had this extraordinary, the whole floor we had for makeup and wardrobe and a place for refreshments, and then in Marina Del Rey in a warehouse. So different locations, and again, that affects what someone wears for wardrobe. All right, let's produce this thing from the perspective of the person being interviewed. I know nothing about the lighting or the sound technicians. What was it like for me to be a participant? I found out very quickly the interviewers were critical. I had not met them before the day of the filming, but they all were very, very gracious, put me at ease, saying, what I want you to, that's important, I'm going to come back to that. What I want you to do is never look at the camera. So if you watch any documentaries, there's never anyone face on to the camera. You're looking off to the side because that's where the interviewer is. The interviewers all said, look at me, don't look anywhere else, just look at me. Although one of them said, I'm going to be behind the camera and you're going to see me down in this image below the camera. So I had to look down to see the interviewer asking me the questions. And they all said, with the exception of one, if you don't think you can answer this question well, just tell me, we'll go on to the next one. Now, the only problem I had with any interviewer, and I won't mention the production company, but the interviewer said, well, you answered that question this way. Could you possibly answer it this way? Because they had a particular theme they wanted for this story, and I said no. Well, why can't you just say it this way? It was only 2 sentences. I said, because I have no evidence that that's accurate. Well, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So we got past that, and about 15 minutes later, they did it again. So they finally got used to me saying, no, I'm going to say it based on what I know about the subject. But most of the interviewers were really, really good. I felt very comfortable with them, and it was fun interacting with them. wardrobe and makeup. Man, I didn't know anything about this. I thought the first one was the way it goes, the one where they didn't touch me at all, didn't brush my hair, no makeup during the pandemic. But after that, depending upon the production company, I might spend 30 minutes in the makeup chair. And I asked, what exactly are you doing? They said, well, you have this area up here that's not going to be shown well in bright lights. We need to get rid of that glare up here. And your nose, we need to do something here, and so we got to darken your eyebrows just a little bit here. And when they got done, they said, well, what do you think? And I go, Jesus Christ, is that me? I didn't recognize who I was in this. And that's the one extreme. And the other extreme was when I was in Marina Del Rey, I was in the chair for about a minute and a half. She said, oh, this looks good. Based upon the background that we're going to use here, you're just fine. Now let me get to the hard part, the wardrobe question. I purposely wore this jacket and this shirt to illustrate. Some filmmakers, depending upon the natural light or the artificial light, want the people being interviewed to wear a bland color like this jacket. A light brown, a light green, no bright colors, no orange shirts like that shirt right there. No orange shirts. And others say, if you wear brown or light green, you'll disappear into the background of the scene. So we want you to wear bright colors, like this blue shirt. This one I wore for Las Vegas in the 1950s. My last interview was in May in Marina Del Rey, and they tried to be easy with me by saying, why don't you bring 3 wardrobes? And we wanted to be all blues and grays. Just bring variations on blues and grays, slacks, shirt, jackets. So I packed all that into my luggage when I flew out, and I showed up. I'm gonna do a sidebar on that. By the way, all the travel these companies take care of. They say, here are the days we want you there. What flight? What time of day do you want your flight out of St. Louis to Newark or LA or wherever it is? And somebody picks me up at the airport. They take me to a nice hotel. They pick me up at the hotel to drive me to the place where I'm going to be interviewed. They gave me a per diem to cover meals, and to top it off, they gave me an honorarium. So it was all easy. All I had to do was show up and say something. So I get picked up at the hotel with my 3 wardrobes over my shoulder. We go to the warehouse, and I go in to meet the wardrobe lady, and she said, oh, these look nice. You got the blues and the grays like we asked. However, you're the last one we're interviewing for this episode, and pretty much everybody's worn blue and gray. So maybe we could change this up a little bit. So here, come in here. So I went into the wardrobe room, and she said, we just been to the men's warehouse. What size are you? So, I got the right size slacks and the right size shirt and jacket, and said, okay, go try this on. So I went into the change room, put it on, and came out. All right, just sit here, and we'll take a picture and send it to her. It was always her or she. I never knew the name of this person, but clearly she or her was in charge of this particular episode. So they took a shot of me, sent it, and we talked for a little bit, and came back. She doesn't like it at all. Let's try something else. Okay. So I tied this, and this, go put that on. So went out, sat down, took the picture. She did not like that either. And the interviewer said, well, Larry, I'm really sorry. I said, look, I got a flight back to St. Louis at 10 after 12 tomorrow afternoon. As long as I'm on that plane, you can take as long as you want. Any guesses as to how many wardrobe changes I had before they said yes? You say 5?
12.
12? 11. So I ended up wearing black Levi jeans, a light blue shirt, and tan jacket. She really liked that. She said, it makes you look like a mobster. Okay. And when I got to be interviewed, the interviewer said, would you be okay if you didn't wear your glasses? Okay, that's fine. So the same company made 2 interviews with me, one wearing glasses and the next one's going to be out wearing glasses. But that was the fun part, you know, because they're trying to get it right. They're trying to get the lighting right. And one element I didn't mention, when they did the interviews in the warehouse, I've watched several episodes of History's Greatest Mysteries, and they always had the people being interviewed sitting in a chair in an empty warehouse. So I walked in and I said, "Where's the empty warehouse?" And they took me around the curtain, and there was this giant green screen, concave, around behind me. And they said, "Oh, we put the warehouse in later, after we've edited the interviews. That's when we put, you're going to be right in front of this green screen." That's another reason for them having to be very careful with what the interviewees are going to wear, because it could blend in very badly with the green screen. All right, interviews over. The interviews had lasted for me anywhere from 1.5 hours to 3 hours. And one thing I noticed, because I suffer from dry mouth, that's actually a condition. My hygienist said, you suffer from dry mouth. I discovered something, the 6 West Productions, I never heard of before. It's a traditional medicinal called throat coat. And it's made from licorice root, slippery elm bark, marshmallow root, cinnamon bark, orange peel, and wild cherry bark. And it's really good for a dry throat. So I know now when I get a sore throat in the winter, I'm going to drink organic throat coat. I went through 2 cups of that, and it really worked. It kept the dryness in my throat from making it impossible to answer the questions. All right, so the filming's over. I go home, and Boyd Productions is the best at this. Once they had the entire script, they sent it to everybody who was interviewed. And they said, "We want you to be sure and assure us that what you said was accurate. And if it wasn't accurate, let us know, because we can have the narrator take care of that. And oh, by the way, if you see what somebody else said that was inaccurate, tell us that also. We can also do that." Well, I only found a couple of mistakes that other people made, and I think other people found a couple of mistakes I made. I identified a mistake I made. When I read it, I went, I couldn't have really said that, but evidently I did. And this is an example. These are the instructions. These questions are also in the script. They are things I could not confirm. Please put your answers, if you know the answer, in this document. And it's a long, long document. So I really appreciated their concern with accuracy. And I finally asked in an email to the owner of the production company, I said, "Why do you spend so much time with this?" And she said, "For many people, this will be the only history of Las Vegas they were ever consult. So we want it to be as accurate as humanly possible." All right, so let's put all the pieces together before I show you a couple of clips here. A really good documentary will have this omniscient narrator. It used to be only male voices. Now it's increasingly female voices. Most of the ones I've been in, the narrator is female. And you depend upon that person. You depend upon them to get the chronology right, and that they're making the nice segues into the next section. Then you have the proverbial talking heads, the quote experts that they bring in. And again, they want the experts to only give 2, 3, maybe 4 good sentences. And then if you keep going, they'll just cut it. And they'll use only the part of what you said that works for the interpretation that they're offering. And they'll use lots of still photos. They prefer videos. They told me as they progressed in Las Vegas history from the 20s to the 30s, finally to the 40s, they had so many videos they could use that really moved the story along better, they said. And some of these production companies will do reenactments, which usually are unfortunate because they're not paying great salaries to the actors. This is one scene from Booze, the Vets, and the Sex That Built America. And in that scene that I found a photograph of, they're depicting Bugsy Siegel explaining what he's going to do with the Flamingo Hotel. And this fellow doesn't look anything like Bugsy Siegel did. So looks like they could have found somebody who looked like Benjamin Bojack. So those are the pieces that you hope to see, and the two clips I'm going to use. One from Las Vegas in the 1940s. I picked that one because I think it does a nice job of pulling all those pieces together. You hear this confident narrator who's putting together all the pieces of the story. You see lots of still shots, a little bit of video, and a talking head or two. So let's see if Katie set this up so I don't screw it up.
At the beginning of the 1940s, Fremont Street, that's still where most of the stores are. That's where you go to shop for clothes. That's where you go to shop for food. It is still the center of town.
Fremont was where it all was in Las Vegas. The gambling casinos were there, and retail was there. The Albertel Theater was there, a couple of jewelry stores, a couple of drugstores, J.C. Penney's.
There's something appealing about Fremont Street at this time with all the lights and all the activity and all the people on the street.
At night when all the neon comes on, people saw it as kind of a magical place. Some journalists who visited said, it's like being in Times Square in New York City. It's so bright and so effervescent.
Even glamorous Hollywood stars thought Las Vegas was fun.
Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood in the late 30s through the 1940s. He would often stop and stay overnight in Las Vegas, and he always said positive things.
There were more films that were being shot in Southern Nevada.
Have you ever been in Las Vegas? Where?
We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 films that were shot.
Frank Sinatra is usually associated with Las Vegas from his 1950s years, but actually his connection to Las Vegas begins in 1941 with his performance in Las Vegas Nights. Some members of the Chamber of Commerce said, well, if we had a film that would portray Las Vegas in this very friendly way, it could probably do a lot for tourism.
Nevada, with its miles and miles of colorful sand and purple sea, vivid sunsets and brilliant moonlit nights.
And they persuaded Paramount Pictures to make a movie about Las Vegas.
No income tax, no inheritance tax, no sales tax. In other words, no taxes.
Now, you can't prove that the Chamber of Commerce fed this material to the screenwriter for Las Vegas Nights.
Sound like a Chamber of Commerce pamphlet.
That's where I read it.
But it looks almost exactly what the Chamber of Commerce was sending out in brochures and in ads in newspapers.
But kidding aside, you know what they call this place?
No what?
The friendliest little city in the world. And it really is. Why, even I know everyone in town by his first name. That is, almost everyone.
Now this next clip is about the former federal building and how it was used before it becomes the museum. And the reason they asked me to be a part of this is I'd done some research on the efforts of the U.S. Senate to investigate the role of organized crime in American life, particularly organized crime's connection to gambling. And the Senate appoints a man named Estes Kefauver to head this investigation, and they go to 14 cities, including Las Vegas. And the day they question the suspects, if you will, is a day that the museum uses every year to let people in for free to tour the spot where this investigation took place. And you can see me being interviewed in this penthouse of the owner of the El Cortez hotel and casino.
After the war, the federal building is the setting for several high-profile events. One of the government's major efforts to crack down on organized crime takes place in the federal courtroom.
After World War II, if one picked up a newspaper, it was almost inevitable you would see a story or two about organized crime's impact on virtually every city's government. So the U.S. Senate appointed a special committee and picked an ambitious Tennessee senator named Estes Kefauver to lead the charge.
Climaxing 10 months of nationwide hearings, the Senate Crime Investigating Committee, headed by Senator Kefauver, opens hearings in New York.
This investigation was nationwide. They went to 14 cities. They spent 90 days in hearings. They questioned over 800 witnesses.
I'm not going to answer another question. You just says I'm not under arrest and I'm going to walk out.
And the result was the publication of over 11,000 pages of testimony.
They decided to hold a hearing in Las Vegas so that they could learn more about the mob's involvement with the casino industry. They held that hearing in the courtroom on the second floor. This was a big deal in Las Vegas. There was a great deal of concern, on the one hand, of what the Kefauver Committee might discover.
The key person that they interviewed, it was almost 2 hours, was Mo Sedway. And when Sedway took the stand, they asked him, do you know any of these fellows? And they asked him a list of the major organized crime figures in America, like Joe Adonis, and Meyer Lansky, and Frank Costello, and Mo Dalitz. And he said, yeah, I know all those fellows. In fact, 6 weeks ago, I was in New York, and it was with Frank Costello at a bar. Well, Mo Sedway is associated with several casinos in Las Vegas, notably the Flamingo.
Evening, Wilbur.
They also interviewed Wilbur Clark, who just opened the Desert Inn, and they knew that he'd been backed by the Cleveland Syndicate, headed by Mo Dalitz.
The Kefauver Committee reserves its hardest line of inquiry for Nevada Lieutenant Governor Cliff Jones, who owns shares in the Thunderbird, Golden Nugget, and Pioneer casinos. The committee also questions Jones about why the Nevada Tax Commission, which oversees gambling licenses, grandfathered in operators with criminal records. Jones defends the policy, saying, quote, as long as they conduct themselves properly, I think there's probably no harm comes of it, unquote. The Kefauver Committee can do little more than express dismay at Jones's close ties to the gambling industry. But 4 years later, after criminal kingpin Meyer Lansky is linked to the Thunderbird, the Nevada Tax Commission briefly shuts down the casino and suspends Jones's license. The Kefauver Committee is scathing in its assessment of Las Vegas and its connection to organized crime.
Kefauver said, if this is legalized gambling, it's a failure because they have not eliminated people who are linked to organized crime in giving these licenses out. So this becomes a banner story in Las Vegas. We'll have to fight it through the 50s, the 60s, well into the 1970s. One of the intriguing ironies of the Kefauver investigation, some of these guys involved in illegal gambling all over the country decided they probably ought to go towards legal. So Las Vegas and Reno become a magnet for these fellows who wanted to do what they've been doing illegally. And what it does is bring an extraordinary level of expertise in gaming to Las Vegas.
So, that was my journey through being in documentary films. It was fun. It was time-consuming when I was there, but it was a treat to do. And when I get home this evening, if there's an email from a production company saying, "Hey, we're going to make a documentary on X. Would you like to be a part?" I'll go, "Sign me up," because they treat you well. You don't get a lot of money for it, but it doesn't cost you anything to do it. And the really nice thing, they always ask, how do you want to be identified? in the lower frame. It's an opportunity not just to give yourself visibility, but to give the university some visibility. So I'm always made sure that they put down Missouri University of Science and Technology whenever they identify who I am. So that's it. Want to ask me any questions about why you should do it if you get asked to do it? Or what are the, I can't think of a downside to being in a documentary. Yes, Debbie.
I've seen a couple of them. Is it always the same batch of historians? Do you all know each other and get together and talk history?
Let's see. For the ones on the city of Las Vegas, there's going to be a different answer based depending upon which one we're talking about. This series, you see some familiar faces because three of the people are on that Centennial Commission. But then they try to bring in people who are specialists in some other aspect that they just don't know very much about. So if you watch the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, they bring in different people. And they asked me to be in the one in the 60s. And I said, look, Jennifer, I could add maybe 10 minutes and good answers to your questions. It would be a waste of your money if you included me in the 1960s. So they brought in some different people for the 60s. Now the one I made, I was in this one. They had people from all over the place. I knew one person because his father had actually got the idea for the flamingo. His name is Willie Wilkerson. His father was Billy Wilkerson. I know him. I've been on a panel with him a couple of times. So I didn't know any of the others for that one. And for History's Greatest Mysteries, I don't know yet. The only people I know who were also interviewed for those episodes included a retired Los Angeles police detective. I didn't get to meet her. And someone from the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, but I don't know anybody else. So it depends upon which company's doing it. Good question. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes.
The program that they contacted you about from the UK, was that the same as This Is Your Life in America?
It's a little similar, not exactly. They try to surprise people with something about their background, but it's well done. I think the one in the United States now is done by Henry Louis Gates. I'm forgetting the name of it. He's in about his 11th or 12th season, but it's similar to that.
Because I always wondered if they really were surprised or if they were just faking it.
Well, most of them are actors.
Okay.
So, I don't know. Had I been able to go and be in that sequence with Gwyneth Paltrow, I could have found out and told you. I don't know. Good question. Anything else? Yes?
I don't know how much you know about the production process, but were people, did they start with a script, then invite the talking heads in, or did they revise the script after they interviewed the talking heads? How did that process work?
Depending upon the company. For the last two I was in, which are going to be in this series, I got contacted by one of the producers, and she said, can we talk on the phone? And I said, sure. We talked for 30 minutes. She said, how about we do a Zoom meeting? Okay, so we set that up, and about 5 minutes in, I realized it was an audition. Because she was going through the premise of the show, and the premise of all these episodes, whether it's about Noah's Ark, or the Titanic, or the escape from Alcatraz, all these mysteries, they give the viewers about 6 theories. And what they want the, quote, experts to talk about is what's the evidence for this theory and this theory, what are the weaknesses in this theory. And I got a sense from that they were taking some of my input. Not a great deal, but some of it. So I think they were doing that with all the people that they were interviewing. So I think the people being interviewed play some role, but not a great deal. I think it's driven by the researchers. That's a good question. I don't know enough to give you a real thorough answer. Yes, Mark.
I assume the feedback that you've been getting from former students and people you know has been positive, I assume.
And it's so far, and the three, and what's amazing to me, these 3 that never been on a network. They've never been on a cable channel. They're only on the homepage of the city of Las Vegas and YouTube. But the 3 that I was in have attracted over 4 million views. They're remarkably popular, and those aren't the most popular ones. I think the one for the 1920s that they made was the most popular one. But they're very, very popular, and they do a big promo of it in Las Vegas before premiere night. I got to go to 3 premiere nights, and the mayor is there, and a lot of the hoo-ha people in Las Vegas are there, and you know, you can go up and have a glass of punch with somebody important. They go, "Who are you?" And but that was fun. Yeah, I've gotten some feedback from friends. Some say, "What was wrong with your face?" I said, "Well, it was all the makeup. I wasn't sick. They just put a lot of makeup on."
Nobody in a shark-skin suit said, "Be careful what you say, or you could be sleeping with the fishes."
No, although I've given some talks at the Mob Museum, and particularly on the book Benjamin Bugsy Siegel and Bugsy's Shadow. And the Mob Museum, when they have programs like that, they fill all the seats. People in Las Vegas really like to go listen about gangsters, whether it's John Gotti or Al Capone or Bugsy Siegel, and they ask really tough questions. And one talk I gave was on the anniversary of the opening of the Flamingo, which was December of 1946. And I never noticed the gentleman, but he had been sitting off to my right. And when I'd answered all the questions and we were leaving to go to a book signing, he came up to me. This man on a cane kind of stooped over, and all he did was lean into me and say, "You did good." Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And you may have seen a guy named Jeff Schumacher on one of these clips. He's the head of programming for the Mob Museum. And I said, "Jeff, who was that little man that leaned into me and said I did good?" He said, "Oh, he was at the opening of the Flamingo in December 1946. He was there to make sure that the dealers weren't stealing from Bugsy Siegel." So that's the best affirmation I've ever gotten of something I had to say. No one's ever threatened me so far. Yes.
Question from the internet. They would like to know if you've ever been asked to consult for historical fiction, like a television show like Downton Abbey, or do you know anything about that or experience?
Well, I wish that person had brought that up. I purposely didn't mention my one experience, which wasn't good. About 2003 or 4, I got contacted by a screenwriter in LA saying, "I'm working on a script for a 2-part series on the Salem witchcraft trials," because I'd done 2 books on Salem witchcraft. And I said, "Okay, I'll look at it." So they sent me the script and I read it and I went, "Oh my gosh, this is really awful." And so we had a phone call and I was very frank. I said, "Here are the things that I thought were pretty good, but here are the things that really need to be changed because there's no basis in fact for these sequences that are included." And she said, "Okay, appreciate your input." They didn't make any changes, so I thought when I watched it, please don't let my name be in the credits for it, and it wasn't. So I'm not telling you what it was, but once I was a consultant for some historical fiction on television.
Do you enjoy historical fiction? This is a follow-up question.
Yeah, I think historical fiction is very, very good. Some historians, academic historians, really don't like it because they say, well, it's too much of a departure from what really happened. And I go, well, if they're capturing kind of the spirit of the time, it might induce somebody to want to go and read more about that time period or that topic. No, it doesn't bother me unless it's done really badly. Downton Abbey's done very well, but not the thing that I was a consultant on. Anything else? Yes?
Do you have a favorite project that you worked on?
Yes. The one I showed you the clip on, the 1940s. A really important decade in Las Vegas. Even though I'd written a book on the 50s in Las Vegas, I was not in that one very much because they tried to use different perspectives. So if you see that one, you only get to see this shirt just a little bit. me in the 1950s. The one thing I really like they included me on for the 1950s, I did a chapter on women's work in Las Vegas in the 1950s, and I made the case that it was one of the last places in entertainment where women could make a career as a dancer or showgirl. And Las Vegas paid the best, so that was really good. But there were a lot of women who wanted to be dealers in the casinos. That's really good money also because you make really nice tips. But the men in Las Vegas said, if we let women become dealers, they'll settle for a lower salary or wage and that'll drive down ours. So there was this big meeting at the city commission hall in November 1958. About 400 men showed up, about 24 women. All the members of the city commission were men, so you know where that one went. And they did a nice segment on that there were some opportunities for women in Las Vegas in the 50s, but in most cases they were locked out, like most of America. That was true in most of America in the 1950s. I like that one the best. The 40s the best. All right, thank you very much. That was fun. And Jim Bogan does make it. Don't miss Jim Bogan and don't miss The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
You bet.